Welcome to my channel Synchro once again. Today we will discuss about the topic types of working capital. In one of my video working capital, we have discussed about the meaning, its constituents and the sources of working capital. Today we will see the types of working capital. So let us begin. Let us first revise what does working capital means. It is defined as the excess of current assets over current liabilities and provisions. So in a simple way, your working capital is what? It is the excess of current assets over current liabilities and provisions. In accounting terms, when it is said to us to calculate the working capital, we calculate it at working capital equals to current assets minus current liabilities. So this is what your working capital is. This working capital is required to carry out the day-to-day operational activities of the business. So let us begin to the types of working capital. So there are 6 types of working capital. First one is your permanent working capital. Second, temporary working capital. Third, gross working capital. Fourth, net working capital. Fifth, positive working capital. And sixth, negative working capital. So we will see all these 6 types of working capital in detail. So let us begin with the first one, that is your permanent working capital. The operating cycle is a continuous process and therefore the need of current assets. But the amount of current assets increases and decreases over time. There is always a minimum level of current assets required at all time by the firm to carry out its business operation. This minimum level of current asset required is known as permanent working capital or fixed working capital. See, in working capital I have told you about the operating cycle. Operating cycle is nothing but how you manage your raw materials, that is bring to the manufacturing process, then it is converted to the finished goods, then it is sold in the market and you receive the cash, and this type of process continue in the business. So the amount of current assets which is required by the firm to carry out this operating cycle sometimes increases or sometimes decreases over the time. कभी हमें ज़्यादा चाहिए होता है करंट एसेट, कभी हमें कम चाहिए होता है. सो इट डिपेंड्स, टाइम पे फ़र्क पड़ता है. बट एक फर्म को एक मिनिमम लेवल करंट एसेट्स का एक मिनिमम लेवल मेंटेन करना पड़ता है कि इतना तो कैपिटल, इतना करंट एसेट्स हमारे फर्म में होना ही चाहिए. वो जो मिनिमम लेवल ऑफ करंट एसेट जो फर्म को मेंटेन करना पड़ता है ताकि वो अपना बिजनेस ऑपरेशन डेली बेसिस पे चला सके, उस मिनिमम लेवल ऑफ करंट एसेट को हम क्या कहते हैं? परमानेंट वर्किंग कैपिटल. हमें कभी करंट एसेट ज़्यादा चाहिए, कभी कम चाहिए, बट कंपनी में या हमें फर्म में एक मिनिमम लेवल मेंटेन करना पड़ता है कि इतना तो करंट एसेट होना ही चाहिए फर्म में. सो जो मिनिमम लेवल ऑफ करंट एसेट जो फर्म मेंटेन करके रखती है अपने बिजनेस में, उसको हम क्या कहते हैं? परमानेंट वर्किंग कैपिटल कहते हैं, या हम फिक्स्ड वर्किंग कैपिटल भी कह सकते हैं. सो ये होता है आपका परमानेंट वर्किंग कैपिटल. Next comes your temporary working capital. This is also known as fluctuating or the variable working capital. The amount of temporary working capital keeps on changing depending upon the change in production and sales. Therefore, the extra working capital required to support the changing production and sales activity is known as temporary working capital. सो आपका टेम्पररी वर्किंग कैपिटल को हम फ्लक्चुएटिंग और वेरिएबल वर्किंग कैपिटल भी कहते हैं. सी, टेम्पररी वर्किंग कैपिटल कीप्स ऑन चेंजिंग डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द प्रोडक्शन एंड सेल्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एक्स्ट्रा इन्वेंट्री ऑफ फिनिश्ड गुड्स विल हैव टू बी मेंटेन्ड ड्यूरिंग द पीक पीरियड्स ऑफ सेल. अगर if the sales is going on a large scale and there is a large demand of your product, then there is a need for more production, and for more production you need more capital. So this more production is not always static. मतलब आपको हमेशा नहीं ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन की ज़रूरत पड़ती है. कभी कभी सेल्स कम होती है तो प्रोडक्शन कम करना पड़ता है, तो आपको वर्किंग कैपिटल कम मेंटेन करना पड़ता है. तो यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? प्रोडक्शन और सेल्स की वजह से आप कभी वर्किंग कैपिटल यू हैव टू रिक्वायर लार्ज नंबर ऑफ वर्किंग कैपिटल, कभी आपको कम वर्किंग कैपिटल चाहिए. तो ये जो चेंज होता है, कभी ज़्यादा कभी कम प्रोडक्शन और सेल्स की वजह से, उसको हम टेम्पररी वर्किंग कैपिटल करते हैं. That is why it is called as extra working capital required to support the changing production and sales activities is known as your temporary working capital. Now let us see the next, that is gross working capital. Gross working capital basically means the amount of funds invested in the various components of current assets. Here it is said components of current assets. See, there are various components of current assets, that is inventories, investments, prepaid expenses, loans and advances. These are what? These are the components of the current assets. So the amount of funds invested in these components of the current assets is basically called your क्रॉस वर्किंग कैपिटल. कितना अमाउंट, कितना फंड इन्वेस्ट किया गया है इन करंट एसेट्स के कंपोनेंट्स में, उसको हम कहते हैं ग्रॉस वर्किंग कैपिटल. ओके, नाउ नेक्स्ट कम्स योर नेट वर्किंग कैपिटल. See, it is the difference between current assets and current liabilities. In simple words, what does the net working capital means? The difference between the current assets and current liabilities. जो current assets और current liabilities का difference होता है उसको हम नेट वर्किंग कैपिटल कहते हैं. सो दिस इज व्हाट योर ग्रॉस वर्किंग कैपिटल एंड नेट वर्किंग कैपिटल. नाउ नेक्स्ट कम्स योर पॉजिटिव वर्किंग कैपिटल. इट रेफर्स टू द करंट एसेट्स व्हिच एक्सीड्स द करंट लायबिलिटीज. व्हेन द करंट एसेट्स exceeds the current liabilities means when your current assets is more than your current liabilities, then it is a condition of positive working capital. Now next comes your negative working capital. When current liabilities exceed current assets, negative working capital emerges. So in this case, what happens? In this case, current liabilities is more than your current assets. When your current liabilities is more than your current assets, then it is called as negative working capital. And the negative working capital situation is not a good thing for a firm. Okay. Now, so this was your 6 types of working capital. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If it is like that, then please like, share and subscribe to my channel Syncro. Till then, thank you.